All right, welcome to the Kenny Pickett Show on Panther-Lair.com, presented by WellHive. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. He's Kenny Pickett from Pitt Football. Kenny, here you are, man. It's the final week of training camp, presumably your final training camp. It's like your fifth training camp, and I was actually thinking about that today. 5 training camps now. You've been through them all. You've been on the inside of all those. How has training camp at Pitt changed since 2017? Like, what are some of the changes you've seen Coach Narduzzi make from that first camp in 2017 up until now?
It's a good question. I think my first camp, I think that was the first year they took out 2-a-days, if I'm correct. If I remember from the older guys said, and we were in the hotel for like 3.5 weeks. And that was a long time in the hotel. And it's been different since then. We've cut back on being in the hotel. Last year we were in there for 16 days. And now we have this week of living at home and still in camp before we start really full game prep for UMass next week, even though we already started getting into some film and had a rocks period going against, some of their looks today. So I would just say probably cutting down the hotel time.
Oh, okay. I know that the rule this year where you guys can have like 9 full pads practices or something. I know that probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but I mean, I don't know. What impact do you think that can have on the team? I mean, do you think guys are staying fresher? Do you think guys won't be as ready to hit, or what do you think of that rule?
No, I think it's a good rule. I think it will keep guys fresher. And I think they said 50% of all concussions comes in camp. There was a number that was pretty alarming that, I think it was just cutting back on the full padded practice and going live every day. I think cutting back on that's really good for the team and college football in general and keeping guys healthy.
Mm-hmm. So, as we enter this final week of camp, getting ready, like you said, for the real game week next week, I mean, what are some of your observations? What have you seen out of the team? I think everybody always has the best camp they've ever had. So, I mean, I'm sure that's the case again this year. But I mean, what are some things you've noticed over the last couple of weeks, and what are you really, looking forward to or encouraged about heading into this final week here?
Yeah, I would just say the competition in not only between the offense and defense, but within position groups. I think we're deeper at a lot of places we haven't been in my time here. And, that really makes it, every practice you've got to bring your best and everyone's got to be on point. And, you got to be up to date in your installs, and you can't have any MAs or MEs. And I think guys are really taking that to heart and they're bringing their best every day, which is great to see.
I think we're going to talk about the secondary in a little bit. One of the questions from the fans asked about it, but since you mentioned the depth, I'm curious. From the outside, it looks like that secondary is really deep this year. The corners and safeties, it looks like you can rotate, 8 guys out there and not have a lot of drop off. Is that how it feels from your perspective? You line up, whether you're against the 1s or the 2s, and there's not a lot of weaknesses or vulnerabilities. I mean, at least among the first and second team at corner and safety.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, with the defense, I mean, I couldn't really tell you who the 1s and 2s are. In previous years, I would tell you there was a drop off. I would have a pretty good idea. Now with the kind of depth we have over there and how many guys I think are ready to go out there and start and play. I mean, like you said, they can rotate some guys in there. There's not a drop off. I mean, it's the fastest secondary we've had. We've had some, some really talented players in my time here, but I think from top to bottom, this is probably one of the faster secondaries we've had. Cover a lot of ground. They're mixing in some new coverages, and they're doing a really good job picking everything up and keeping us on our toes. So I'm really excited to see how those guys go out there and perform, this season.
I know in recent, the last few weeks, we talked about the running backs and receivers one week. We talked about the tight ends. We haven't really talked about the offensive line a lot. And I'm particularly curious about working with a new center. I mean, you and Jimmy were together for like 4 years or something like that. And I think people on the outside fans media, we always talk about quarterback center connection, and you got to be on the same page and all this stuff. I mean, what is that from the quarterback's perspective? How important is it to have that kind of connection with the center? I mean, obviously you and Jimmy built it over a number of years, but how significant is that? How important is it?
Yeah, it's pretty important. And, obviously, like you said, me and Jimmy made that connection over a long period of time. I know the time he needs to make his calls. He knows what I need. If I make a check, we're always pretty, in sync with that. He would have a pretty good idea of the check before I would even have to make it, which was, always good, always be on the same page. And I would just verify it and we would go. But now, I mean, I think Owen's a guy who's been here for a long time. He's worked under Jimmy. There was times where I got snaps with Owen. I mean, the Boston College game, he had to go in there and play, and we really didn't skip a beat. He really did a great job of stepping in there. And, we came in together. So there was times where I've had, a lot of reps with Owen when I was a freshman when I came in. Obviously he wasn't there when I enrolled early, but in the summers I was working with him, pretty extensively. So I have a great connection with Owen, and I really like where we're at right now. Obviously it's not as strong as it was with Jimmy. It's not going to be that way right off the bat, but I feel really, really comfortable with him already.
Sometimes I feel like the center almost has to like know and be able to recognize the defense as much as the quarterback almost. Do you sense that Owen kind of picked up on that from working with Jimmy for so long? Do you see him kind of carrying over some of the, like, having learned things from Jimmy, I guess, in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he knows fronts well. He's reading the shell, the secondary well, to help with protections and whatever we need him to do and help out. He's doing all those things. So I think he's really stepped up big time, and Jimmy did a great job of getting him ready. And he's stepping up to the role and taking control of it. So I'm really happy for him.
Nice. The other new guy on the offensive line, there's Marcus Minor coming in as a transfer from from Maryland. You guys have had O-line transfers pretty much every year you've been at Pitt, so it's not really anything new. How have you seen Marcus sort of get into that group, assimilate? Seems like O-linemen, I know every position group's tight, but it seems like O-linemen in particular are usually a pretty tight group. Has he gotten into that group pretty well?
Yeah, he fit in like it's like he's been here his whole career. And like you said, I mean, we've done a really good job of bringing in some really talented guys from other places. He ranks up there as one of the better guys on the offensive line. He's a veteran guy, leadership guy that, came in and really just, filled in for Bryce. And really, like I said, I mean, didn't skip a beat. He's smart. He picked up the offense. He plays really hard. He brings his best every day. So, he's a guy that's fit in like he's been here his whole career. And, I'm really glad that he's on our team now.
You mentioned about how you and Owen came in together, and that was part of like a giant offensive line group in your class, that class of 2017. Owen's still here. Obviously, Gabe and Carter are still here. Overall, with that 2017 recruiting class, you guys are in your 5th years now. Some like AJ came back for that extra year, but you guys have been around for a while. There's a bunch of you left. Is there a bond within a recruiting class? I mean, can you guys, as you move through the years, I mean, do you guys still have kind of a bond, or you kind of break off and more bond with like your position group and that kind of thing? Or do some of those bonds that you built, those ties, still kind of carry over 3, 4, or 5 years down the road?
Yeah, I think they carry on for your whole career, and then we'll all be friends together, long after football is done for us. So, I think we came in with an unbelievable class. I mean, Damari Mathis has been my locker mate since we first got here. So me and him have been through this. We talk literally every single day about anything. I'm great friends with Damari and Cam Bright on the defensive side. And you mentioned the O-lineman already, but Cam Bright's same deal. A guy I've been pretty tight with my entire career here. So I think we did a great job of coming tight together in the recruiting process. I think that's a big thing for a class to do, get to know each other, and then every day, every season, it kind of just that bond just grows stronger and stronger. Now we're all in our 5th year here, and we're excited to go out with a bang.
Do you remember who the first guy you met was in the class? Like, of the guys who ended up signing with you, do you remember the first one you like met in person, or first one you talked to?
First one I met in person. That's a really good question. He posted that picture of me and Carter Warner from back in 2017. That was crazy. That seems like I remember that game like it was yesterday. It's crazy how fast time goes. But I want to say either Carson or Kyle Nunn. I want to say on one of the game visits, I think I sat, and Gabe was there pretty early too. I think those 3 guys were some of the first people I met that I knew we'd all be together.
I was just kind of curious about the recruiting process. I mean, you went through that whole fall, you're committed, everything is good. And then Matt Canada leaves to go to LSU. I think that was before you signed. You were going to enroll early, and some other schools trying to get in. Were there other guys in the class that you talked to during that period when you were maybe, just trying to make sure you were still set on Pitt? Were there other guys in your class that you talked to, or guys that called you up and like, hey, Kenny, don't go anywhere, man, stick with us, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of guys from what I remember that were just sending me some texts. That was a crazy time because of, obviously Coach Canada leaving, Coach Narduzzi being a defensive guy. And I was planning on rolling early at the spot that I was at Pitt. And that was my plan the whole time. Wherever I was going to go to school, I was going to go early. So yeah, it was up in the air for a while there. And I just woke up one day and signed the papers and here I am. So it all worked out.
I remember North Carolina was talked about a lot, that they were trying to pursue you during that period there. Were there any points over the next 2 or 3 years where that staff, like before a game, would come up to you and be like, "Hey, Kenny, man, should have come with us," or anything like that? Did they ever bring it up down the road a few years?
No, I mean, there's so many staffs that because I mean, this coaching game is crazy. Guys are moving every year. They're at different spots. So I've seen guys from all different schools that recruited me, and no, I mean, they wish you well, and I wish them well, and at the end of the day, they'll say I ended up at the right spot. I mean, looking at the kind of career I've had here, and having this chance to go out and have a successful last season. So I feel great where I'm at. Love Pitt, and everything worked out for me.
All right, last one along those kind of lines, because you just made me think of it. Is there anybody on another team in the ACC that you either got to know through the recruiting process, either when you were getting recruited or a guy that Pitt was trying to get, that you still kind of run into pregame or postgame and say, to yourself, maybe say, "Man, I wish he was on our team." You know what I mean? Wish we could have gotten him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a guy I work out with all the time when I go home. Justin Shorter, receiver, went to Penn State. Now he's at Florida. He's a guy we play together in 7-on-7 with, and we always just had always had a really good connection. Made a lot of plays together in the 7-on-7 circuit, and he's a guy that I was trying real hard to get here. Just I think we had an opportunity to have a lot of success together. But he's another guy who's doing really well, and he's a guy I knew he would do well wherever he goes. He's a hard worker. We always link up when we get back in Jersey and throw together, a couple times a week. So I'd say that's the other guy for sure.
Okay. All right. As we always do, we take questions from the fans on Panther-Lair.com. And our first one comes in from T Floss. He asks, who's the toughest or best of the defensive backs in practice? Now, you can answer that on the current roster. If you want to just pick guys who are no longer around so you don't offend any of your current teammates, or if you just want to call somebody out, who's that guy that, I don't know, I don't want to say you shy away from, but who's the toughest DB out there?
Yeah, I'll go 2 old teammates. We'll stay off the current ones because there are a lot of really tough current ones, and I don't want to miss anybody. But 2 right off the top of my head, Avonte Maddox and Jason Pinnock. 2 guys that are just crazy athletic, and 2 different body types. Like Jason was so long and fast. His thing, he played on top of receivers, and he would take away the back shoulder because of his length. So there's some guys that are smaller where they're fast and they play on top of receivers on go balls. I know I can back shoulder them all day and I'll be okay. With Jason, it was a little bit different because of how physical and how tall and long he was, and he could jump 40 inches or whatever he did at that pro day. So he just athletically, he's as big as receivers are, and he can run faster than a lot of them. And I'd say Avonte can watch him in the league. I mean, he covers guys in the slot and outside just because of his speed. I mean, he's a 4.3 guy. And he plays at 4.3. I know a lot of 4.3 guys that don't go out there and play at that speed, but he's 100 miles an hour out there, and he covers the best of them in the NFL, and he was really tough to throw against here. So I'd say those 2 toughest cover guys that I've played against here at Pitt.
You talked about Jason and sort of how you had to play him differently than maybe a different style of corner. I mean, I got to think that gets tricky over time in training camp. You're going against the same guys all the time. Their tendencies. I mean, what Marquez likes to do, or what MJ likes to do. I mean, you knew what Jason did. I don't know. I mean, you still got to make the plays, right? But I mean, is it kind of tricky? Do you just take advantage, play off their tendencies like that just to kind of complete the pass, or do you have to approach it differently because you're trying to accomplish different things in practice? You know what I mean? Like, you're facing the same guys every time. I would think it's the same thing with like the DNs and the offensive tackles. Like, oh, I know what move will meet this guy. I know what this guy likes to do. I mean, how much do you almost kind of know too much about your opponent when you're in training camp that long?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, more than you would know versus the 1 week game prep, film study. But I think it all, circles back to that preparation and knowing your opponent and having a breakdown of how, each corner plays and each safety plays, what they've gotten beat on. So I think it kind of helps you kind of hone that skill of playing off a guy's weakness, playing off something that you've seen on tape, watching it before practice, going out there and executing it. Kind of similar to watching on Friday before, last cleanup on Friday, and then you go out there and play on Saturday, and you can just go play fast and you see something and that's the weakness you've seen, over and over again on film, and you can go attack it. So I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of hone that skill of playing off a guy's weakness and recognizing things in the game. So no, I absolutely attack every weakness I see in practice, and we talk about it too. That's the good thing about having good teammates. You know, if they ask why I do certain things, you know, I'm very upfront, straight honest. Like, listen, I see that, you know, X, Y, Z. This is why I threw here, and this is what I saw that you gave up. And you know, they go out there and fix it, and then it makes my life harder. But that's all part of, you know, growing and being better and being a good teammate. And you know, we have a really good working relationship with the defense. So you know, I asked them questions today. You know, today Voss made a great play, and I kind of went over and picked his brain a little bit about it. So I think it's all positive things, and it helps you, you know, go out into the game and play fast.
All right, last thing on the DBs, I got to ask you, over the last 5 years, what DB has gotten you the most in practice? Picked you off the most? I know you had that one camp where you didn't throw any interceptions. We heard all about that. But
yeah,
over the last 5 years, you know, spring camp, training camp, game week practices, who's gotten you the most?
Who's got me the most? It's a good question. I mean, Paris Ford. Paris Ford was always, his instincts were always, you know, he's the best instinctual player I've ever played against. I put Paris Ford. I'll put Paris Ford as the DB. I'll put Servassier Dennis as the linebacker. I think those two guys. And it's instincts for Paris, and for Voss, like you said, over time playing against the same guys, they pick up scheme, they pick up. So, you know, he does a really good job of robbing some things that, you know, the normal guy doesn't pick up because he's worried about other things. But Voss is ahead of the game there. He's a guy who's grown mentally. Physically, he's obviously a great player. Watching him pass rush on the blitz and watching him fill the hole. But, you know, knowledge-wise, that guy's picked it up another notch this season. You know, he's really done a great job preparing. So I'm excited to watch him go out there, and I'm happy he's on our team.
All right. Next question from the fans. The Pit Boy asks, what freshman has impressed you the most, either during spring camp or training camp? Is there one guy? You can pick one on offense, one on defense, or just anybody who's really jumped out at you.
I'll go. Yeah, I'm going to think just because offensively, I'm going to think two off the top of my head. Jaden Bradley's done a really good job at receiver. His workload is like by far the most in the receiver room. So he's running ones, twos, threes, anything that we need him to do. He's out there playing hard. Does he make mistakes? Absolutely. Just like every freshman makes mistakes. I've made mistakes a ton when I was a freshman, a ton now. You know, but he's doing a really good job of going out there and just working hard every day. You know, not getting down on himself, always picking himself up and bouncing back. And then Rodney, you know, Rodney and running back's done a great job. You know, he was a guy that stuck out. I think we talked about him earlier, and, you know, he's a guy that's continuing to improve. You know, physically and mentally, and going out there and running the ball hard. When he gets the ball, he gets his foot in the ground. He goes north-south. He's a tough runner. You know, he's added some weight too, so he looks good physically. So I'm excited to see how he continues to develop here.
You mentioned Jaden. I mean, he's got size that maybe you guys haven't really had that kind of size of receiver over the last, 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, he seems like he's bigger than. Have you had another receiver, another scholarship guy who's as big as Jaden is?
I mean, he's in the boat of Tayseer and Jared Wayne. I think they're all very similar size. He reminds me of Jared a lot when Jared came in as a freshman. You know, but he's done a really, really nice job, and he's a guy that'll make a lot of plays here. You know, he'll get involved this year, but I think, you know, down the road he'll be a guy that'll stick out here for sure.
Okay. All right, Kenny. Well, we're running out of time here, so we'll save the rest of our questions for next week. But, you know, what's this last week of training camp look like? You guys just trying to clean some things up before you head into a real, you know, official sort of game week? What are the next few days going to look like for you guys?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're full go, man. We're full pads today. We'll be full pads tomorrow. You know, there's not a day to waste, so we're excited that, you know, obviously we know September 4th is right around the corner, but there's a lot of stuff that we got to clean up before game week, and we start fully prepping for UMass. You know, but we'll be ready to go. I'm excited. The team's focused, and you know, we'll get going here shortly.
All right, Kenny. We'll have a good final week of camp, and we will talk to you next week to get ready for UMass.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks.